All right. So now, can everybody hear me okay? Now that I'm
Yeah.
all right, awesome. Awesome. So, I really wanted to put this class together for everybody. And, the name of this class is creating a proper practice routine in the current environment. But I think it's important. It's so much more than that. And a lot of you are people who are currently working with me online right now. About 80%, 85% of my clients before everything shut down are still working with me online. And I even have some new clients. And, like many of you, and, we were all totally blindsided by this, right? Like one week, we're all together, we're all just working in the studio. And then the next second, everything just shuts down, and I think that right away, there was a weekend, and I remember, I think it was the weekend of March 14th, March 15th. And right away, I just made the decision that I was actually going to keep going. And I was going to try to find a way that we could all still continue to work together. And, it's actually been an incredible experience. And I think I just have to start out by saying, when we talk about that experience, that this is a very, very tough time for everybody, right? And
Yeah.
you're going to definitely hear me like saying stuff like about taking things to the next level, improving things, upping our game. But look, we all have to also acknowledge that we have to have compassion for each other during this time. And that's really, really important. I've said, and you heard me say this, I've said, I don't blame anybody right now for sort of wanting to just get out of bed, do their online learning, and just get back in bed, right? Okay, but now that I've said that, and I'm just going to share my screen with everybody, because this is really important and we're really going to get into it. Okay. I've found myself constantly, and the students who inspire me to say what I'm about to say. As tough a time as this is, as hard as it is for everybody right now, I think that.
All right, Ben?
I
We'll
think.
go out soon.
Oh, could everybody just please turn their mics off, actually, if you just don't mind? Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
What? Are you ready for your apple?
1 second. Okay. So anyway, as I was saying, you just want to hope for the best, but move forward with the spirit of innovation and the attitude of adaptability. I think that right now, waiting things out is not a strategy. And I want to repeat that. Waiting things out is not a strategy. I know that there are a lot of people right now who really are just sort of sitting on the fence, waiting for everything to return to normal. And I'm not sure when that's going to be. And even when things get back to something that resembles normal, there are so many things happening right now, and the world is shifting under our feet. Okay. And that's really what brings me to having this class for all of you, because I think that all of you love playing music, right? Like everybody here loves music. It's so important. And, we have to find a way to keep doing that even in this environment. So, that's where I'm going to start, because the truth is 2 months is going to go by, 6 months is going to go by. And you know what's going to happen? You're either going to have kept playing and kept going, and you're either going to, be a better musician, or you're not. And I'm very, very concerned about people getting left behind during this time. And that's one of the reasons why, I'm starting out with that message, because, time is going to march on whether we like it or not. And it is a choice. Everybody has that choice. So, I've been putting up a lot of posts about this topic, and what I'm reading off of right now is my post that I'm going to share with all of you when this is done. It's also on Facebook. You can find it, and it's sort of just bullet points that I'm going to be talking about today. So let me get to my first thing. And, you know, I've been working with so many students over the past 2 months. We've learned so much. And this is just something, you know, a lot of things I'm going to say, you might listen and you might say, oh, well, that applied way before any of this started. But you know what? Like so many things in our world today, the trend is accelerating. And anything that was happening before, if you were having trouble with it, it was just a challenge, it's going to be much harder now in this online environment. So number one, when it comes to practicing and improving, goal setting and purpose must be the driving force behind the relationship with your instrument. So what does that mean? I mean, what does that mean? Does anybody want to like volunteer and share? What do you think that means? You're welcome to raise your hand if you want to add to that, or I can just throw on. What does that mean? Purpose. What do we mean by that? Anybody? No, we're going to be a little bit shy. That's cool. No problem. I'll just keep going. Those of you who don't know me or don't work in the studio, you'll pretty much find out that I can talk for hours. It's no problem at all. So anyway, purpose. Yeah. What are we talking about? Okay. Like basically, you know, every time you pick up your instrument, I once had told me you're either going to get better or you're going to get worse. And this really applies now more than ever. So many of you were used to playing in your school music programs. So many of you were used to coming in here and playing with other people. Now it's just you and me on the other side of the screen. And really, it's just you most of the time. And you have to make sure that whenever you sit down and you do something, you know, you're going to set goals and try to achieve something. You have to hold yourself accountable and you have to hold yourself responsible for what you're doing. Now, look, later in the post, I'm going to get to how we have to have fun and we also have to do so much more than just setting goals. But it starts with, look, what are you actually trying to accomplish? I am seeing students every single day do some of the best work that they have ever seen. I just want to be really clear about that. You know, so this is a very exciting time for learning if you have the right attitude. Okay? And, you know, I just wanted to share a few things that some of my students have done. One of my students, Addison, and she's actually going to be with us next week on part 2 of this series, sharing some of her work. If you see here, she just does a quick practice log, you know, and every day she's doing, and all my students know about, we've got full strokes, we've got stone killers, you know, all of these different things. And it's a really cool thing, but she's setting those goals and she's putting it together. And it seems like such a small and insignificant thing. You might look at it and say, oh, that's not a big deal. That's such an easy little thing to do. No, it's actually a big deal because that little thing is holding her accountable. And look, without a plan of action, all the work that you've put into playing your instrument, it's going to wash away. This time, it can wash away, and everybody's at risk for that. And I don't want to see that happen. Practice logs are a great way to hold yourself accountable. I just wanted to share another practice log, and Sai actually is with us, right? Sai, you're with us today. Sai has a very, very detailed log that she keeps. I mean, you know, it's probably more than a lot of students are going to do, but it's really helpful. She has her goals laid out. Her and I discussed them. And there's an internal dialogue that goes on. So, you know, that kind of stuff and whatever you really need to do to set goals is important. And I think sometimes when we think about goals, we sort of think it has to be this gigantic thing we have to do. But I would say in this environment, any goal is a good goal. I mean, I have a 4th grader, for example, who decided back in March, I'm just going to learn all my scales. That's where I'm starting. And literally, she found that with that very simple goal, 2 weeks, 4th grade, everybody, 4th grade, 9 years old. She was done. And now we're talking about chord charts. We're talking about improvisation. We're talking about things that she had no idea she would even get into. So a small goal can really be just like a seed. You plant it, and if you keep watering it, guess what happens? And let me tell you, when you're stuck by yourself right now trying to get better, that matters. Okay. And I go back to them, like I want all of you playing and having fun, but I also want you to realize that you can do some of your best work ever in this environment. And that's not me just speaking. I am seeing it every single day. And that's why I'm having this class. And I know, definitely like I'm going to just point you out, Saya. I know you're with us right now. Saya has been on that log. She's been in communication. I see Jephthah over there. He's another one. Hey, Jephthah, what's up, man? I just see so many of you taking this so seriously right now. I mean, Nico, man, I'm talking about you, bro. I mean, Nico, Owen, all you guys, you're playing is changing, and it's very, very exciting. And by the way, that's all of you. That's all of you. So just remember that this is a very hard time, but if you can set goals and get organized, it can also be a very powerful time. I'm going to go on to the second thing because I know some of you are like younger and you probably are listening to me talk and you're sort of saying, okay, that's great, Simon, but how do I even start out by setting goals? What am I going to do? I'm all by myself. I only meet with you for half an hour a week. I don't have the kind of oversight I used to have. I know a lot of you talk about that. Well, look, here's something very simple. Just organize what you're doing into strengths and weaknesses. Okay, that is so easy. I have a student, and she's going to be joining us next week. And everybody, if you can turn off your microphones, I would appreciate that because I get a lot of blowback when I'm talking. Thanks so much. Yep, it's a big help. Thank you. So, my student Addison, and please, I hope everybody's going to come back for part 2 next week. There's so much we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about creating content. We're going to be talking about all the things that students in my studio are doing right now. It's very exciting. Strengths and weaknesses, Addison, when we started back in March, okay, and, we kind of were like, well, now we're sitting online. You have a little bit more time. What are we going to do? We basically broke it down. She had a very, very sort of glaring weakness. There's been tension in her hands for a very, very long time. We've tried to work it out at the studio, and between school, between everything else going on, it was just hard to do it. So that practice log, the one up here that I showed you, is actually a reflection of those early moments when we decided to sort of take out stick control, take out master studies, go back to the basics. I know a lot of you work out of stick control and master studies. And, just by doing that simple thing, by organizing it into strengths and weaknesses, we were actually able to fix her issue. And every single one of you knows what your strengths and weaknesses are because you're working with them. And I'll just, I'm going to actually point out, like I see Dylan over there. What's up, Dylan? Wave to everybody, man. How's it going? Like Dylan is like 10, right? So Dylan's like really excited. He's always on it. I'm always talking to his dad. We're always trying to get stuff happening. And, Dylan, we identified very early on in this process that we're going to fix your time. Time is just something that you always have to have an eye on. And the truth is, we're doing a lot of other assignments, but that's been a very positive thing, Dylan, for you to zero in on. And I always like to point out what students are doing because it's helpful. So again, every one of you can do that. These are quick things. You could spend 2 minutes after this class. You can get organized and you can organize your strengths and weaknesses. And already now you're making sure that your time spent is going to be productive, and that's really important right now. And I want to say one more thing about being productive right now, because I want to go back to that concept of just sort of sitting around and waiting it out and how I don't think that's a good strategy right now. I know that every one of you has to wake up every morning to some list of assignments on Google Classroom. And my son and my family, we are the same way. It's like, you wake up, it's like, oh my God, what do I have to do today? And I know how tiring that is. And, I think that when you get organized about your instrument and when you make sure that you're going to make progress, you actually make it easier on yourself to continue. And, I just think, again, it goes back to back in February, getting organized, sorting out your strengths and weaknesses was super important. It is more important than ever before now, because if you don't do it, you're going to find you're going to burn out. And you're also going to find that you're just going to eventually 3 months, 6 months, you're going to say, you know what? I don't want to play anymore. I'm sort of not into it. It's just too hard. And again, if you're saying to yourself right now, well, yeah, that's great, Simon, but I will get back into it in June or July when everything goes back to normal. I'm not sure about that, everybody. I'm just not sure. I think this is going to be a long road, no matter what happens. And I think that you're all still going to grow up. You're all still going to be here. And I don't want to see you give up. I don't want to see you give up because you're waiting for something that I'm just not sure how it's going to play out. So again, when you do these things, you're taking steps to make sure that you're actually in control of this outcome for yourself. I know that a couple students and I have had that very conversation this week. You are in control of these outcomes. There's so much we can't control right now, but we can definitely control what we're doing, in terms of organizing and setting everything up. So I'm going to keep going here. Okay. And I'll definitely, I want to have some questions and opportunity for that if anybody's interested. So let me just keep going to the next thing. Okay. So the next thing we have is fundamentals have always been important. They are still important. And you know what's funny? This is something, I remember those early lessons in March. It was like great because every single person who didn't know their flam rudiments got to learn their flam rudiments. Okay. Every single person who didn't know their scales got to know their scales. And this is more than just me as an educator. You need to know this. Okay. It's so much deeper than that. The reason you need your fundamentals now is because you are in an environment where you're going to have to produce content for yourself. You're going to have to be held accountable for the content you produce, and you're going to have to be your own best advocate. I will help you. I think you all know that. Like, I'm here to help. I'm here to inspire, and I'm definitely going to push you when I can. But the truth is, online, you have to be accountable. And it's very, very challenging to do anything without fundamentals. Okay, I'll give you a quick example. I know some of you are working on songs, right? So it's like, how are you going to play a song if you don't even know how to play eighth notes, okay, on the hi-hat at a reasonable tempo? Okay, go back to what I said about Addison before and relaxation, right? And learning how to relax, learning how to get rid of tension. How are you going to learn how to do any of that without those basic concepts? How are you going to read for your teacher? I'm thinking of a Mallet student I have right now who's reading Etudes in the Goldenberg if you don't have a basic grasp of scales and reading. Okay? Fundamentals are absolutely crucial right now, not just because it's some music thing to say. Fundamentals are crucial because you need them in order to progress in this environment. And if you don't have them, you're going to have a lot of trouble and you're going to become very, very uninspired. And I don't want to see that happen to any of you. Okay, so again, everything I say, it may sort of feel like sometimes, oh, that was something that we needed before, but you'll find very, very often that there is a new dynamic emerging. And that dynamic for yourself is that you've got to make this happen. And like, it doesn't mean your teacher's not important. I'm very important. Every teacher's important for what they're doing for their students. But man, the buck stops with you more than ever. And if you just get that idea in your head, you are going to be very, very successful. And I'm seeing that over and over again. I'm just seeing so many students. And Jephthah, as I'm like saying this, I'm thinking of your setup. I'm just thinking like, I remember that early on, Jephthah had a lesson with me. It was like back in late March or early April, something like that. And, everyone was still figuring out their setup. And he was just like all over it, like right away. And it was one of the most productive lessons that I had up until that point. So, and Jeff, like you and I and your dad, you guys are gearheads, right? So we're always talking about that stuff. You're into that, right?
Yeah.
But thing is like, that is so important because I didn't ask them to do that. And, I think it's really, really crucial that everybody keep thinking of your setup, improving your setup. And, fundamentals are just also, it's all part of the same picture. Hey, Pete, what's up, man? How are you? Everybody, Pete's here. Remember Pete joined us for Ensemble? Yeah, say hi to Pete. What's up, man? Good to see you. I think you're muted, but I'm going to unmute you. Do you have a welcome message for the group? There you are.
Oh, no, I just finished doing some teaching. I do a group practice thing with my students every day, and it just finished up. And so I wanted to join in, just check things out, because Simon's got some wisdom, and I want to learn.
Well, dude, thanks for coming, man. That is awesome. Yeah, I've seen your thing. That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, you and I got to talk about that sometime. I want you to come guest.
I would love that. I would love that. Let's definitely do that.
Cool.
Let me keep going because now I sort of segued from fundamentals and I segued from fundamentals into setup. And you heard me talking about that. And everything also when we're talking about setup, you can go back to my previous post, online lessons learned. You can see when I just mentioned Jephthah's awesome setup. You can definitely check that out. I have a picture of it up there so you can see it. It's all on the blog. Okay, be sure that your setup encourages your practice and ease. Constantly refer back to this point as you read onward in this post. And I'm going to tell you a story because I think it's the best way I can illustrate this kind of point to you. I have learned this over many years of just doing way too much, like a million different things all the time. And I know a lot of you guys love that, but let me tell you, I have had to develop some weird, I don't know, powers or whatever to do stuff because it's hard. You're going from sometimes schlepping gear, you're setting up mics now. We're sort of doing mallet lessons. We're doing, drum lessons. We're doing all these different things. And I've learned a very valuable lesson, which is very subtle shifts in energy during your day, things you can do to sort of expend, less energy, very subtle things. They all add up into really big results. And you can really actually do a lot of good for yourself. And I think in this environment, that's important. And I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to give you an example. So I'm going to go back to when I was a kid growing up. I used to have a setup downstairs in my basement. I would have my drum set downstairs. Okay. So that was kind of hanging out in the basement. Upstairs, I had my concert snare and a music stand and my sheet music, my drum pad, stuff that wasn't drum set. And I used to audition for a New Jersey region band. And, I would always practice those solos upstairs. And then I would go downstairs to practice drum set. And the drum set was out of the way. Now, look, I started playing drums because I wanted to be awesome. And like all of you, I never really started playing drums because I wanted to audition for region band and play concert snare drum, right? I mean, we want to play drums to be awesome. But believe it or not, because the concert snare was in my room, right, where I spent most of my time, guess what I ended up playing more? I ended up playing the concert snare more. And the drum set sort of, I played it, but I'll be honest, I didn't play it as much as I should have. It always sort of was something I had to go to do. Fast forward about a year, I get to 7th, 8th grade. I finally say, you know what? I'm putting it all together in my room. And guess what happened? I started driving my parents nuts because I started waking up in the morning and playing drum set right away. But the point, is that little thing, it seems sort of insignificant. It almost seems like in theory, it's great to separate things. It made a big difference. And I know for many of you right now, and I know for me, I've got basically 3 different stations in how I give these lessons to you. I have a drum pad station, I have a drum set station, and then I have a mallet station. And I just want to tell you, I mean, I've been spending a lot of time trying to find ways that I can quickly move from thing to thing, because if I have to reset every single time, oh man, it is going to be exhausting to do online work with all of you. Okay, so now let's talk about you. All right, let's talk about you. And you've all been in this situation, so let's just be honest. Okay, it's like, we're doing a lesson and I go, all right, let's get out stick control and go to page 16, flam beats. And all of a sudden the whole lesson just melts down. It's like, you're like, oh, okay, I got to get up. You got to get up. I got to go get stick control. And then you get stick control. And then you're like, oh, I got to get a music stand. Or no, all you try to put it on the toms first. Oh, and I see you laughing, man. All of you, like you've all been there. We've all done it. It's cool. Yeah, it's cool. I'm not, no criticism. It's just the truth. We've all been there, and then the stick control, it falls off of the tom. And you're like, oh. And 5 minutes goes by and I'm sitting here. I'm like, you know what? Like, dude, respectfully, you're paying for this time. And the thing is like, but what if you have a stand set up already? What if then you have two stands, maybe one on your drum set and one in front of your pad? What if it's all easy? Your practice sessions have to be that way. And when we get into part 2 of this class, and so many of you are doing such great work right now with content creation, so many of you are collaborating right now, which is so awesome. But content creation is hard work if you're not set up to do it. Let me give you an example. Is it easier to just take a finger and press record because you're all set up? Or is it easier to set up everything 500 times, your phone, your cables, every single day? I mean, you already know the answer to that. So the reality is, I think that setups are so important right now. Look, I come from teaching in academia. We used to have 5 marimbas in the room. Setups were important then too, okay? But it's really important right now, and I see a lot of students, they overlook it, and they don't mean to, but it's just something that I can't emphasize enough. Like James J., I see you over there in the corner. Wave to everybody. What's up, dude? And again, we're not criticizing, right, James? Didn't I just say to you yesterday, man, like, let's work on that setup. That's just something that we all have to do. And don't feel bad about it. Yeah, that's what we're all here. We're talking about it. You know what I mean? That's why we're doing it. So this is part of the dynamic. And just remember that if you do it, you're going to see results for yourself. It's worth your time. These are not sort of, I always feel like sometimes I don't want to say things that everybody else is saying. I don't want to sort of just post the obvious stuff, but obvious isn't always so obvious. I've discovered that. And I've definitely discovered that online. And I think a lot of you have as well. So let me move on. Okay. And this next one is really important. And this is going to kind of segue into what we're talking about next week, and really this new paradigm that we're all sort of a part of right now. Because again, the world is shifting under our feet, and the sooner we acknowledge these things, the better, because all of you, and I see it every day, and I'm going to keep saying it this whole class, all of you are doing some of your best work right now. Many of you are. And, that's because you're recognizing the truth, and that is good for you. It's not easy right now to do that. Good for you. So number 5, videos, audio files, and practice logs are now a very important supplement to your progress. You will pivot off of these things to propel yourself forward. They need to be a part of your daily routine. And we're talking about the new normal, everybody. Okay? And I think, again, just another thing that was going on before, but it's been accelerated, right? The trend has now been accelerated. I said this in my previous post. I'm going to repeat myself, but that's okay. In the past, a video, maybe a practice log, maybe any content that you created. And it doesn't have to, content doesn't mean something you upload to YouTube. It could just mean something you create to help yourself do a better job. Something that you create as a supplement to what we're doing. In the past, that was sort of like value added, right? Like, I remember, Saya, when we started your practice log, which actually started before online, it was like, wow, Saya's doing a practice log. And I would always say to everybody to do it, but Saya actually did it. Okay. Well, now I don't think it's value added anymore. I think that you have to have these things, which is why I sent all of you personal assessments at the end of last month, a shared Google Doc with you and your family. And then I started putting your assignments down on that. And then many of you, and again, most of you are sending me videos now with a shared Google Drive on a weekly basis. And, you know, that is so important because the thing is when you're by yourself, when you're not playing with other people, you've got to hold yourself accountable. Again, sorry to be redundant. I know I'm being redundant. There's a good reason for it. Okay? It's to help you. And the truth is, you know, you have to hold yourself accountable in this environment. When you sit down and when you turn that computer on, you say, okay, I'm going to try. Simon asked me to record, I don't know, this bossa nova groove or, you know, page 47 of the Goldenberg, whatever it is. Simon asked me to do that. I'm going to try to get it. And then you try 5, and you've all been there, right? Like you try 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times to get it. You are creating something for yourself in this environment. You're creating something great for yourself. And it's something that holds you accountable. You're making it real. And it is such a positive thing. You're doing. Does everybody understand you are doing? And doing right now is so important. Practicing is great. Practice all day long. But doing is so important when you create these practice logs and these videos. And then what happens is, you end up having a catalog of content that you've created for yourself, you know, maybe a video from 3 weeks ago. And you can look back, you can pivot off of those things, and you're creating your own reality where you can be successful. And creating your own reality for success is not only important, it's a very real thing. It's not a fantasy. You know, I know like sometimes I'll say that and you listen, you're like creating your own reality for success. Man, Simon, dude, what are you talking about? No, that's real. And I see it happening every single day when a student sends me a video and they say to me, dude, this took me 7 tries and it still isn't very good. And then we get into the lesson, we talk about it, and then they leave and they try it again. And you know what? That student's not going to stop playing music, okay? Or the student, and those of you in our junior meetings know this, the student who is trying to upload songs every single week, right? You know Billy, man. We love Billy. Everyone's smiling. Everyone's like, yeah, Billy, yeah, you know? And Billy's sitting there, man, with his YouTube channel. He's uploading songs every week. The first song he did, he was like, oh, this fill is all over the place. Oh, this is all. But you know what, man? He's in 5th grade, and he's going to keep trying. And he is creating his own reality, and he's going to be a great player. And you know, that's what we all have to do right now. And content creation is king online. And that is why, you know, I'm pushing that so hard. You know, so again, we're going to be talking about that next week. And I know Saya's going to share some of her content with us. Addison's going to share some of her content. I'm going to have some other students share what they've been making. I'm going to show you some of these channels. You know, look, we're only a couple months in, but a new paradigm for success is being created. And, you know, again, don't wait. I mean, it's happening, you know, and it's a very exciting time. And I think we have a couple people here who maybe are music educators. You have students, you know, like we want people playing. You know, like we want people playing, but I will also say this. We want people playing who actually want to play. Okay? And you know, I would say that if the idea of creating content and doing all these things and creating your own reality for success, your own paradigm, if that's a reality that sounds just scary to you, like, oh my God, I don't want to do that. That's too much work. Simon's crazy. Well, then why are you even studying music? I mean, because the truth is, this is exciting stuff, you know, and I know you guys get what I'm saying. I know you do because I see you doing it every day. So, you know, make that choice to evolve. Don't remain stagnant. And it's, you know, it's a mindset, and content creation is just one of the tools that we're using right now to define and create that mindset. So let me go on to my last point. And this is actually something that, again, it's going to sound sort of cliche, but it's going to kind of bring it all together because, and it goes back to what I just said about, you know, you're spending all this time getting organized. You're spending all this time listing your strengths and weaknesses. You're thinking about the fundamentals. You're thinking about the big picture. You're thinking about content, creating your reality. You're doing all this stuff. Okay. Here's a thought though. You know, I remember, like, again, just going back when we were working with our 2 ensembles back in February, when I used to work at NYU and I had my ensemble there. There's a lot of learning that goes on when you play with other musicians. We know that. Playing with other musicians is what this is all about. Right now, we may not have instantaneous, simultaneous access to that. But I would say that you've never had a better opportunity to learn how to use what you're working on because it's on your own terms. And I'll give you an example. I'll go back to Billy. We were talking, Billy's not here today, but everybody here, a lot of people here know him. When I'm talking about these awesome, YouTube uploads he's doing, and everything that he's trying to do, this is all stuff that we're working on in lessons. And he sort of said to me, Simon, this is kind of what I want to do. And he's able to quickly apply the stuff in lessons, and it's a direct bridge into what he loves doing. Sometimes when we do ensemble stuff, I always try to pick stuff you want to do. We tend to kind of collaborate, but it's also, not just coming from you, right? Like, it's a collaboration. Well, in this environment, you get to pick when you're creative. And you get to say, gee, I want to see what it's like to actually have to play flams and do it this way. Let me find some songs where they do that. Let me try that. And so I think that, the reality is that, like, it's a great time to have fun. and we all need a little fun right now, don't we? I mean, I'll be honest. I'm one of those crazy people who has fun when I'm working hard and getting better. And I'm encouraging that today, right? I'm encouraging that. But I also want you, to just get inspired by certain things. And I know, Jephthah, I keep going to you, but I have another example. I remember, like, prior to this whole thing, Jephthah was trying to find a snare drum. Okay. And his dad, man, we talked about snare drums so many times. Well, it wasn't really until this whole thing happened that I saw that finally take place. He was able to finally sit down. They found what he wanted and really just do it the way he wanted to do it. It wasn't, something that I use or that a lot of people, it's what he wanted. You know what I mean? And that's a beautiful thing. Okay. And I think that all of you right now have the potential to create that environment for yourselves and that dynamic. I have a student, Juno, and all Juno, who right now is learning Rush tunes, which, every drummer does at some point, right? But what's interesting about Juno is that he never expressed one iota of interest in Rush prior to this whole thing happening. I would show Rush videos at our ensemble meetings. He thought it was cool, but then he discovered it on his own, and now he's on his 3rd tune. And you all see he's trying his best, and that's exciting. So, again, this is a time to kind of find out why you're doing music. And it's a great thing for all of you, because sometimes when you go to your band classes, or even some of my classes, you're sort of like, okay, well, he's kind of yelling at me again, and I'm not getting it, and I'm not practicing. And it's like, maybe sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that. Well, guess what? You have no excuses now. None. So, I think having fun is not actually just cliche. I think you can actually build a foundation right now where you can discover things that will keep you playing for the rest of your life. And that foundation is just as important as all of your full strokes and half strokes and doubles and scales. And, how many times have I said to all of you in the past few months, just make some time to listen to music. Just make some time to kind of go exploring. It's okay. You can be compassionate with yourself. It doesn't always have to be, like, go crazy, but the point is you have to water the plants. If you don't water the plants, they don't grow. So look, those are things. And again, I'm going to link everybody to my blog post. I'm actually going to throw it in the chat right now. But, basically it's in the chat. So you can check out those bullet points, but, where I want to close, and then I want to open it up for questions, with everybody, is this. Every single trend, every single issue, everything has been accelerated in this environment. Okay? If you were a student who had trouble with follow through prior to everything shutting down, you are going to have 500 times more trouble now. If you were a student who could not remember to bring your music every week prior to everything shutting down, you are going to have more trouble now. Okay? And that's just a fact. And if you were someone who was on the fence before this, you were just showing up to your lessons and never really putting a lot of effort in, you're probably not going to make it when it comes to playing music and continuing, because in this environment, there are no half measures. And whether you read my post, Online Lessons Learned, whether you read this post, whether you check out our class next week, the week after, and I hope you all will, and I hope you'll spread the word, that's just the reality, that in this environment, there are no half measures. And if you can just kind of accept that, and if you can find a way forward for yourself, you are going to reap tremendous rewards. And again, I see it every single day. So, this is exciting. It's a very scary time. But when I talk about music, it is an exciting time. And I know it's very easy to lose sight of that because maybe we wish things would be a certain way, or we're still sort of holding on to what we want it to be. And I am too. Of course I am. But you know what? You're all going to get older. You're all going to continue. 3 months, 6 months is going to pass. Where are you going to be? And so you're always going to see me go back to that theme. You're always going to see me go back to that in all of these classes. So, look, I want to take some time, and definitely, like Pete, I mean, not to put you on the spot, but I know as somebody who's run a studio for such a long time, if you have anything to add here, we totally welcome that. I think that, but please. And anybody else, Kelly, Dennis, I know I just met you briefly through an email exchange, but if you're music educators, I'd love to hear your perspective. This can definitely open up a little bit to a discussion in addition to some questions. So do we have any questions? Please don't be shy, everybody. Seriously, you're all here to learn, and we're all here to help each other. So do we have any questions? Anybody? Or any observations or things that you might want to share that have helped you? No? Wow. I guess I must be really effective then. Oh, Nico, is that
Simon, I think I just, maybe other people as well, I think I might just need a moment to kind of process and synthesize things and come up with something that's cohesive rather than blurting something out. You know what I mean?
No, and I appreciate you telling me that. So and I apologize if I just sort of it's like a lightning bolt of energy, coming at all of you. I think, Pete, you've known me a long time, so I'm sure that doesn't surprise you.
Yeah, I've known you for a minute.
Nico, did you have something, man?
I have something. I was thinking I usually have a set time and in the day, and then a certain amount of time that I'll practice. And sometimes I'll split that up, so it's not like a giant practice session. It's split up during the day, so it's not as much as just one session.
That's actually so, and you found that helps you. That sort of goes back to that idea of managing your energy in different ways. Is that something you've discovered? It kind of keeps you stable throughout.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit, man? Because I know you're working on drum set, you're working on reading. Do you sort of group it into different things? What's your approach generally?
Well, I'll do drum set, and then I'll do more of stick control stuff in a different session later on.
Cool. And that's really smart. And you know what? I can actually say, Jephthah, that's, even without music, that's a good strategy. With my son, we're even doing that. We're sort of breaking up his day a little bit more. And I think that for all of us, since we have so many goals and so many things going on, that is definitely something productive that we can do. So, yeah. And you know what? That's why I'm saying, everybody, it's always good to share. I appreciate that, Jep. Thanks so much, man. Nico, did you have your hand up, man? Or am I missing that? Okay, I thought he did. Does anybody else have anything? Saya, yes.
Kind of adding on to what Jephthah was saying. I think because we're on our computers so much, practicing has become a nice break to kind of get away from that. So as you were saying, if we spread it out throughout the day, it can be a good break, like do an assignment, then do some practicing and back and forth like that.
Yeah, and you know, Saya, you're very organized, you know, like you and I always talk about that, and that's great. You know, and I maybe one thing I'd like to ask you, Saya, that I think maybe for everybody, because I understand when I talk about getting organized and when I talk about strengths and weaknesses, that comes a little bit easier for some people than others. For some people, that feels like yet another assignment, right? And you just sort of feel like now I've gone from doing, you know, something in school to something else, you know, that feels the same. Is that something that you find, Saya? Do you sort of try to stagger and structure it in ways where it's something really different? What do you really do when you're
Yeah. So I set a certain number of goals for each day, and because I'm working on multiple different projects, I make sure that I'm doing at least one thing for each project in a day, and that way it makes it more interesting for me to go and practice. So I feel like it's always something new that I get to look forward to in a day.
And doesn't that, you know, and everybody can hear that, look, it does take some effort and some thought, right? I mean, that's the thing you have to take from what Saya is saying. And that's a hard thing. You know, I know a lot of people just want to sort of be like, let me play. And you should play, but you also have to acknowledge that in this environment, you're going to have to put forth the effort. And sometimes it's even just putting forth the effort and thinking about what you're going to do. So it's interesting how both Jephthah and Saya, you know, both in high school, both doing this for a while, smart, you know, both have sort of a similar thing where they're kind of like, you know, I've put thought into just how I'm going from thing to thing. And I know when I was younger, I used to underestimate stuff like that. I know I did. So if, you know, I wouldn't be surprised to hear a lot of you younger ones kind of thinking like, well, that's great, but that's not important. No, it is, you know, so thank you both. That's really helpful. Yeah, Pete, man, go ahead.
So this was just a suggestion. So kind of piggybacking on what was just said about, like, you know, everybody's spending a lot of time on their screens, and it's hard, even with the actual act of playing music, it's sometimes tricky to it's tricky to differentiate it from, you know, just the other sessions that you spend. And so one little thing that I actually, a student of mine started doing, and then I started suggesting it to other people, is for each lesson, have a title. Title your lessons. Like a TV show has a title, like, you know, chapters in books have a title. It can be you know, a statement, a question. It can be a quote. It can be anything that kind of helps to encapsulate your experience there and prevent it from just getting filed in that massive warehouse that's labeled online stuff. Just a suggestion.
Well, I think that's great. And you know, everybody with your think about what Pete just said, and then think about your personal assessments, right? So like think about, you have your assessment, and then you have the dates, and lessons do have themes, and you all know that, right? Like, you know, maybe it's funk, or maybe it's stick control, or maybe it's, and you know, I think another way, Pete, I would just say is you're giving life to these things, you know, and you want to give life to these things because these things tend to, especially online. And look, you know, it's funny. We're all in that position, you know, like I'm talking to you about content creation. I'm talking to you about getting organized, and yet it's all sort of, yeah, it's going to be on a screen. You're going to have to do that. And I think that going back to what, you know, I said about being deliberate and being thoughtful, you know, Pete's just saying, like, you got to be thoughtful about giving this stuff life, creating that reality. I want to go back to what I said about that, creating that reality for yourself, because this stuff is rich. You know, like I think like stick control, man, I'm like a fifth generation, like, or fourth generation stick control student. You know, Morello was a first generation. Stone was the original. Okay. And it's like, to me, when we talk about stick control, that means so much. And all of you know that, like, who work with me. When you make titles for these things, you're actually documenting it. And, you know, I just think, Pete, that's such a great suggestion, right? Like, you're sort of giving it this energy, right? Do you have anything else you do, Pete, like in that same vein that you can?
I mean, oh yeah, I mean, I have a ton of other things, but like in terms of letting things, you know, something as simple as like, you know, the way I do it with my students is we have a shared Google Doc and we're both typing on it at the same time, and we can both drag an image or put a link in there or something like that. And just something as simple as like, okay, this week I'm feeling like this font, you know, just something like that. Anything that turns a lesson from routine into occasion is what I'm thinking. I think it's in line with what you're saying, Simon.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, another just to piggyback off of that. I mean, let's remember, everybody, that you have access to being more creative probably than you've ever had access before. You know, and that can be expressed in any number of ways, right? Like from a font color to, I mean, so, you know, next week in our class we're going to talk about that because it's a class on content creation. And I just want to remind everybody, content creation does not mean that you have a blog and you're uploading stuff for the world to see. Content creation just means, you know, like what Pete said, like you're sharing something with your teacher back and forth that you're doing. You guys are creating a record and creating something. That's all that means. So get creative and have fun with it. Everybody does it their own way. You know, I do it the way I do it. Pete does it the way he does it. Other people, that's just what you want to do. Does anybody else, that's great, Pete. Thanks so much, man. Does anybody else have any questions or comments or anything they'd like to share, or observations? All right. Well, look, that was really awesome. I had a lot of fun doing that. You know, I'm going to keep this going. We're going to do one next week on content creation. The week after, we're going to do one on collaborating and creating community. And I know Pete is creating community every single day. He was mentioning one of his classes. You know, we all have to do that right now.
Yeah, actually, if you wouldn't mind, I can. Everybody here is officially invited. If you want to sit in I do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We do a 45-minute pad session at 3:30, and then Tuesday, Thursday, and I just got finished with this. We do xylophone marimba stuff for 45 minutes. I just think of it as rust prevention. That's the way I label it.
Well, you know what, man? I'll be sure to share that on our Facebook page. I will share your thing. I've been meaning to anyway. So, like, everybody definitely check it out. I mean, even if you show up to one, you know, like, just it's, you know, it's good right now to do these things. And, you know, I'm going to definitely, you know, like I said, keep this going. It's just really important right now. And look, let me close the way I opened. And I'm going to close the way I opened with the same quote, because this quote, I just think it's important. And it's, you know, yeah, it's my quote. So I guess it's self-serving, you know, but it's true for all of you. Hope for the best, but move forward with the spirit of innovation, and the attitude of adaptability. Waiting things out is not a strategy. Waiting things out, guys and girls, is not a strategy. And again, I say that with the full understanding of what's going on and how hard it is right now. It doesn't mean I don't understand it. What it means is I don't want to see any of you 6 months, a year from now saying, I just gave up playing. It just was too hard. It was too much. And, you know, it just all sort of stemmed from you waiting for everything to return to normal. Don't make that mistake. You've put way too much time into this. And, you know, I know that. So everybody, thank you so much. I know most of you have seen Alex and Eloise. I haven't seen you for a while. I just want to wave to you over there. How's it going? Great. Everybody doing well? Say hi to your parents, all right? I hope everybody's doing well. Everybody, thank you so much. Dennis and Kelly, great to meet you. Thank you for joining us. Pete, thanks as well. Take care, everybody. All right. Have a great day. I'll see you next week.